My name is Max DeZara. I'm the founder of Akoya Capital. We're a private investment firm headquartered in Chicago. I've come to the whole private equity arena through a very untraditional career path. Most people in private equity that enjoy a career in private equity, it's pretty linear, right? So it's typically an Ivy League school undergrad, investment banking for a few years, and then typically we'll go to one of 4 or 5 B schools prior to entering directly into the private equity industry. My career has been anything but that. My career has been a bit more of a moonshot than it has been a linear career path. So a little bit about my story. I feel very fortunate. I was really fortunate to have been involved in a very entrepreneurial family situation. My father was an immigrant. My father immigrated to the States in the late 50s. My father grew up in the Jewish ghetto in Istanbul, Turkey. And he had a very small little business in the Grand Bazaar in Istanbul, Turkey. That's really where he cut his teeth. I think there was a lot of unrest in Turkey in the late 50s. My father immigrated to the U.S., and when he came to the States, my father literally came here with a suitcase full of clothes, about $1,000, and a tremendous amount of hope and aspiration, and really an extraordinary entrepreneurial spirit. My father spoke 4 languages. English wasn't one of them. So when he relocated here, he also had a language barrier. My father worked 3 jobs when he first came to the States, and then in 1961 he saved as much money as he could. And in 1961 he started a very small company out of our apartment, focusing predominantly on the Hispanic community. His mother language was Spanish, so he capitalized on that. And I used to tease my dad that he never met a camera he didn't like. My father was one of the first people to advertise on Telemundo, which was the Spanish network television station that was just getting launched here in Chicago in the early 60s. And he was the voice and face of the company. So my earliest memories in life were going to work with my father. He had an extraordinary work ethic, and if I wanted to spend time with him, that was the way we did it. So I spent a lot of time around the family business. I will fast forward. My life was kind of predestined in the sense that I'm the eldest. I have 2 younger brothers. So my life was sort of predestined in the sense that I was going to, expectation was I was going to grow up and come into the family business and ultimately take over the family business. Fast forward, I grew up. I in fact went to work in our family business for a couple of years. I attended Harper Community College for a couple of years, and really decided that school wasn't really my thing. I was really anxious to begin my career. So I worked in the family business for a couple of years full time, but ultimately decided that I wanted to do something outside of our family business. And for me, I think it was predicated on a couple of factors. One is I had really a tremendous amount of respect and admiration for what my father had accomplished. And there was something inside of me driving me to prove to myself and I suppose prove to my father on some level that I could be successful independent of the family business. I also have 2 younger brothers, so I had a pretty high degree of confidence that one or both of them would go into the family business and ultimately preserve my father's legacy. Fortunately, both of my brothers went into the family business, and I was lucky enough to have invested alongside my brothers. We bought my father out as he was moving into retirement in the mid-90s. So as he was transitioning out, my brothers, ultimately took over the company. And I invested, I served on the board, and I was just really there to serve as a strategic resource and kind of a mentor to my younger brothers. And what they did is amazing. When we bought the company from my father, the business was doing $2 or $3 million of revenue. Over the next 15 years, my brothers grew the company to just shy of $100 million of revenue. So they had extraordinary success and really took the business to an entirely different level. They wound up selling to a large strategic investor. And it was a great outcome. It created generational wealth for my two brothers, and I did reasonably well on my investment as well. So I was very fortunate. So back to my story, I was in my early 20s. I really wasn't sure what I wanted to do because I never really had to think about it. I had a few offers. I ultimately decided to accept a position with an executive recruiting firm in Chicago. I worked there for 3 years. Really enjoyed the work and discovered that I was actually pretty good at it. So I decided I wanted to spend the first part of my career in the human capital industry. So at the age of 26, I started an executive search firm in Chicago. And with the help of some extremely talented people that we brought on board and developed over time, we built the Carlyle Group into one of the largest retained executive search firms in the country. And then we were actually approached by a strategic investor in 1998. They were headquartered in New York. They were traded on the New York Stock Exchange. And their chairman had raised $100 million of equity capital. And his objective was to aggregate the executive search and staffing industry. And so we ultimately decided to sell to the Whitney Group. And as a result of the merger, it created, at the time, was one of the top 10 retained executive search firms. So it was ultimately a great outcome. It created significant liquidity for myself and my partners. But it was a slog. I mean, it was a real journey, kind of going from startup to having a successful exit. So I started the company in 1982, and for those of you who might recall, 1982, we were in the midst of the greatest recession since the Great Depression. So unemployment was, in the double digits. Interest rates were in the double digits. So in retrospect, it probably wasn't an ideal time to start an executive recruiting firm. But I had worked hard, and I put, all my life savings into starting the Carlyle Group. Initially, we were focused on placing accounting and finance professionals. We had a really interesting opportunity. One of the companies we represented was looking to hire several different very high-level real estate professionals. We had no experience in recruiting real estate professionals, but I built a very good relationship, a trusted relationship with the leadership team of this particular firm, and they gave us a shot. And that really, we pivoted, and that really catapulted Carlyle Group into becoming one of the largest retained executive search firms in the country.
So you had a plan and you had to adjust that plan.
It was an opportunity, yes, that really came out of nowhere, right? But at the time, we were placing accounting and finance professionals, and the way search works, you generally get about a third of somebody's annual salary. So we were at that point placing people making about $50,000 a year. So our fees were about $15K. On the real estate side, these were $200,000 a year salaries. So the fees went from $15K to $60K. It was just a huge transition, and we happened to catch the wave at the right time. There was just insatiable demand for real estate professionals, and so we pivoted. We essentially, over time, abandoned the accounting and finance practice and really went all in on the real estate practice, and we enjoyed a tremendous amount of success. One of the other interesting kind of pivots, back in the early 90s, I built a very good relationship with a partner at McKinsey. He left McKinsey to join a company that was a startup company that was backed by Michael Dell, and they were starting a consulting firm to focus on the internet and focus on e-commerce. So this is like, what is the internet and what is e-commerce, right? So Pete asked if we would help him build the team, which we did. So we started to recruit professionals within the kind of whole e-commerce and internet arena. So we had a very, very mature practice in real estate. I handed that off to my partners, and myself and a couple of other people decided we're going to really try to penetrate this segment, this whole kind of internet wave that tsunami that was coming. And we were very fortunate in that we were really early adopters, and we were early in that game. If you see opportunities, don't be afraid to take some risk, and don't be afraid to pursue those opportunities. opportunities as opposed to being locked into a particular mindset. And we encountered, during the course of that 15 years, we encountered a couple of other major recessions. There were a couple of instances where literally, Don, we were at the edge of the cliff. I had second mortgages on my house. There were a couple of years in particular where, as an entrepreneur, there's a lot of rewards, but there's a lot of potential risks. There were a couple of years where literally my administrative assistant made more money than I did, right? But that just comes with the territory. You need to be able to adapt and adapt to the unforeseen. It was interesting. My father, when I resigned, my dad was exceptional. My dad was unbelievable. So my father, never forget, he gave me a big hug, told me that he was disappointed in my decision, but really respected my decision, and also said that if and when I wanted to come back, I always had a home back in the family business. So, in a sense, I had a bit of a safety net, right? I never had any intention of going back into the family business. But yeah, there were times when there were many times actually that I questioned that decision, particularly as I saw the success my brothers were enjoying and how well Luna was doing. It was a rocket ship, right? And there were times where literally, I mortgaged on my home and was quite concerned about whether we were gonna make it. One thing I'll share. Back in the very early days of starting Carlisle, back in the very early days during this Great Recession, it was really difficult, and we were sort of down to the wire. I had to make payroll, and we were, basically running out of money. I had placed an individual at American National Bank as a financial analyst. That's kind of the world that we lived in, and A&B was my bank. They were who I banked with. So I needed to make payroll. I had a $7,000 receivable with American National Bank. So I walked into the bank and asked to lend. I needed $5,000 in order to make payroll and pay rent and kind of keep the lights on. So I went to the bank asking for a loan. And they said, well, you need collateral. I said, well, the collateral is your receivable. You owe me $7,000. I'm asking for 5 of the 7. Pay it back as soon as you don't even have to pay me. Just pay me 2 and keep the 5, right? Yeah. And they said NFW, they would not lend me the money. Fortunately, very fortunately, my father kind of stepped in and loaned us the money short term until we got the receivable back from A&B. So just goes to show you've got to be able to sort of count on yourself and make sure that you've got a contingency plan. My father was extraordinary. My father was my business mentor, my professional mentor, my personal mentor. I learned a lot. My father had just an unbelievable work ethic. He had a resiliency that was second to none. Just a stick-to-itiveness and an intense desire to succeed, kind of at all costs. And I think some of those attributes rubbed off on me. And so I attribute a lot of that to how fortunate I was to have really been exposed to, a brilliant entrepreneur. So when we merged with Whitney, I shortly after the merger, I was asked to lead our global private equity practice. And essentially what that meant is that we were representing PE firms around the globe, retained by private equity firms around the world, to help them build out their operating companies, their portfolio companies. And we focused exclusively on the C-suite. So it was essentially board-level recruitment and C-suite recruitment for dozens and dozens of operating companies that were owned by private equity firms. So I spent the last 8 or 9 years of my career really focusing on building that global practice. And it just provided an extraordinary perspective on the PE landscape, kind of more outside looking in. And we represented private equity firms across the whole continuum. So, on one end, they might have as little as 300 million of assets under management, all the way up to the largest, KKR and others that have tens of billions of assets under management. And I was really drawn to the handful of private equity firms that executed more of an operationally focused approach towards their investment strategies, meaning they would align with industry experts that brought decades of domain expertise, and those individuals really helped guide their investment thesis and then would take on a meaningful role post-transaction, which just intuitively made a lot of sense to me. Because as I referenced earlier, most people in private equity that are in private equity, it's very linear, right? It's Ivy League undergrad, it's investment banking, it's one of the top 4 B schools right into private equity. And that whole business model puzzles me. The fact that you've got these extraordinarily brilliant finance professionals, but they have no operating experience. They've not worked in a company. They've not had to worry about making payroll. They've not had to worry about executing a strategy, but yet they're empowered to make strategic decisions on behalf of the companies they invest in. And the whole model really puzzled me. But as I began to bifurcate the market, the firms that were leveraging more of a leader-led strategy or an operationally focused strategy were the mega funds, billions and billions of AUM. But as you start to work your way to the middle market, and then more specifically the lower end of the middle market of private equity, that strategy was virtually non-existent, right? So most private equity firms tend to hire in their likeness, right? So it's a very kind of homogenous background. So I really saw an opportunity to create a very differentiated business model within the lower end of the middle market. Bringing more of a leader-focused, leader-led strategy, and really executing that, but focusing on the lower end of the middle market. So much to, frankly, my wife's chagrin, I reinvested essentially everything I made by selling my search firm back into developing what today is Akoya Capital. I started the company in 2005, and we ran into a buzzsaw, as did many, during the Great Recession, 08, 09, which was extremely disruptive to our business model. There were some very, very lean years between 08 and really 12, which really depleted my life savings, right? So we trying to get out in front of it, I was actually quite concerned. So, I built my dream house in Lincoln Park, but as things were becoming precarious back in 09, 10, I was very concerned, frankly, about losing my house to the bank. So we sold the house, we downsized, we moved into a rental. So it was very, very disruptive on a lot of levels. But in a lot of respects, it was the best thing that could have happened. I spent over 20 years in the recruitment industry. While I don't have a formal education, I've been blessed in the sense that I've had an opportunity to interview hundreds and hundreds of extraordinarily accomplished executives. And in some respects, Don, it's almost like a human laboratory, because in an intimate interview setting, you're able to really peel the onion back and understand what really motivates people. What are the attributes that have allowed them to become as successful as they have been? And I was always fascinated when I would be interviewing. I would interview somebody that has an MBA from HBS, just opposed to somebody who might have an undergrad from Illinois State University. Yeah. But why is a guy at Illinois State University so much more successful than the guy at HBS, right? Because you would think the guy at HBS, and a lot of these people, they're born on third base, right? But what I find is the people that went to Illinois State University, they're not born on third base, right? And so I was always sort of fascinated by the fact that, and trying to understand what are those attributes, right? So I learned through that experience the importance that having the right people in the right positions and establishing the right culture can have ultimately on business performance and on achieving great success from a business perspective. following your passion. I mean, pursuing a career that's of genuine interest. I think finding something that aligns well with your skill set. For example, I feel very lucky that I happen to gravitate towards the human capital industry. I think one of the things I do pretty well is connect with people. I understand people, and I'm pretty good at curating and bringing the right people together under the right circumstances, which plays to my natural abilities and my natural strengths. So I think finding something that plays to your natural ability and natural strengths is important. I think the ability to for a young entrepreneur starting, and this is one of the things I think I learned from my father, and I've executed throughout my career. If you decide to do something, you've got to go all in. I mean, you basically have to burn the boat. There's no turning back. I mean, I think that's the perspective and attitude that you need to have. You can't really have a plan B because you just have to kind of go into it that failing is not an option, and you're going to succeed and fulfill your vision and dreams regardless of the obstacles that you encounter along the way. So I think having a high tolerance for ambiguity, being adaptable, being agile, being nimble, those are the attributes that I think, at least based on my experience, that successful entrepreneurs have in common. Our model's interesting, vis-a-vis traditional private equity, where again it's they're looking at things through a finance lens. Our model's interesting in that we have the same technical capabilities that any private equity firm would have. We have a 5-person investment team that would rival any that you'd find at any private equity firm. So they bring that rigor from a finance perspective. But I think what really differentiates us is the operating partners and the sector leaders, right? So we've been extremely fortunate to have assembled a group of individuals like yourself, Don, that bring decades of deep, relevant domain expertise that can really help guide the businesses we're investing in and genuinely help take them to the next level. So that lends a lot of gravitas and a lot of credibility as we're out speaking to business owners. And then I think my own personal journey, while I may not have 30 years in consumer packaged goods or in chemicals or in any of the industries that we touch, right? I don't have that domain expertise. The fact that I've been in their shoes as an entrepreneur, because we're investing in founder-built businesses, so the founders that we're investing in, many of them share a lot of the same kind of stories that I have, right? I mean, they've gone all in, they, been on the brink of disaster, and through hook or by crook, they find a way to make it. And so my story resonates with them on a certain level. Typically, the businesses that we're looking to invest in, they're founder-built businesses, they're fundamentally healthy businesses, but they're under-resourced. And the business owners fundamentally believe their company's best days are ahead of them, not behind them. And they genuinely want a partner, not just capital. I mean, capital's a commodity. There's literally $1 trillion of capital on the sideline looking to go to work. So capital's a commodity. The businesses that we are really attracted to are founders who genuinely value a partnership and value the intellectual property that we collectively can bring to the investment, and really committed to working with them to preserve their legacy and provide significant opportunities for the people who work at that company, and really help catapult that business to the next level. And an opportunity to monetize a lot of the value that they've spent decades of their lives creating, right? So it's a win-win. They get to take a bunch of chips off the table, get to monetize their life's work, but also align with a group that brings a tremendous amount of additional resources to help support the company to the next stage. And one of the things, Don, as I think about it, that is kind of a thread throughout my career, even in the search days, you think about it, we're presenting opportunities for people, right? So we're enhancing the quality of their life, we're progressing their careers. And at Akoya, we're very growth-oriented investors. And one of the things I'm particularly proud of, and Devonsoy is a great example of how the businesses have grown under our guidance, right? So we're creating, massive opportunities for the existing workforce. Again, preserving the founder's legacy, and it's really about job creation and it's about growth, right? And I'm particularly proud of the fact that across the portfolio, the businesses have grown. We've provided significant opportunities for the people who are there and helped take those businesses to the next level.
Really appreciate the time.
Thank you. Thank you.